What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Sunday Night Football Pre-Lock Show here on RotoGrinders, taking you up to what should be one of the more exciting Sunday night games of the year between the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Chargers. Fairly important game in the AFC playoff picture, with the Dolphins still clinging to hopes in the AFC East and the Chargers sitting at 6-6 and pretty much needing as many wins as they can to stay in the wild card race themselves. So it should be an entertaining game tonight. We've got, I think, the highest total that we've seen in a Sunday night game so far this year. And we've got two teams that don't mind chucking the football around a little bit. So should be an entertaining one. We'll get you ready here over the next half hour or so as we head up until kickoff. I am Justin Van Zuiden, STL Cardinals 84. I've got Will Priester alongside. And Chief, what's going on? How's your weekend?
Nothing much, man. Had some time with the girls, and we went to see Christmas lights and stuff like that over this weekend. So that was pretty cool. They'll be here for Christmas, so it's a good little time of year. Mostly spent time with them. I did go to church earlier today, but mostly spent time with them. I mean, they went too, but spent time with them and a bit on the road most of the day. So back here for this game that should be, I mean, if we're right here, very exciting. Both teams should be able to score some points. Shout out to the NFL for kind of having these flex games. And I think this one flexed in. So
it was supposed to be the Broncos again, so no problem with them flexing this one in.
Yeah, so I am hoping that this pulls through and, it gives us the fireworks that I think we're all looking for in this game. I think the biggest thing here is, and man, I feel like I'm hopping into the slate already, but it's so many options tonight. A whole lot of options.
Yeah, plenty of options, and particularly in the passing games for these teams. As I mentioned, both of these teams don't mind chucking it around a bit, so it should be an entertaining game. I'll go ahead and get our lineup HQ up on the screen so you guys can follow along with that as we go. Let's see, I've got FanDuel here. Let me switch that over to DraftKings. But we got about a 55-point total here. What should be a competitive game, 3 or 4 point spread with the Dolphins favored in this one. And, if you look at the props on the quarterbacks, like Herbert's right at 300 yards. In terms of his passing prop, Tua's at about 280, both with juice on over 1.5 touchdowns. It's hard to get away from the passing attacks here with the way that these teams can score some points. So where are you looking as far as how you think this game is going to flow? You think the Dolphins take it? You think it's competitive? How do we see the game playing out here tonight?
Yeah, I think the Dolphins take this game, and I kind of talked about this on the Food for Thought pod. I think Miami didn't leave the West Coast, so they stayed over after playing San Francisco, and so they should be well rested. This isn't one of those ones where they went home, practiced, and then flew back. They just stayed over there, and so I think, Justin, that's really going to help this Miami team this week to not be out of sorts, so to speak, and have their internal time clock kind of dialed in. Had a week of practice on the West Coast. I think it impacts this game a ton, which in turn should yield good fantasy results on both sides. I'm looking for the Miami Dolphins to come out and for Tua to actually go probably close to 320 tonight. That's what I've got personally, which means if that's the case, then these receivers in this offense should pick up some big chunks here.
Yeah, absolutely. And both teams capable of making some big plays through the air, and this should be an entertaining one. So I do think it'll be competitive. Dolphins certainly deserved favorites given the way that they've played offensively this year and the struggles the Chargers have had. But they do get Mike Williams back. Seems like he hasn't rushed it this time. He rushed his way back last time, re-aggravated that injury, and then missed a few more weeks. So there's going to be some nerves around whether or not he's a full go, but seems like he's okay this time around. When I mentioned, these are teams that are going to throw it. So you got Hill, you got Tua, you got Waddle. Eckler, has been seeing a ton of targets, even though he's technically a running back. You've got Keenan Allen, you've got Herbert, you've got Williams back. all sorts of options that could give you some upside with your captain pick tonight. So the question that a lot of people have is, do I just hope for, I take a Keenan Allen or a Tyreek Hill and hope they get all the targets? Do I put a quarterback in there? Do I put Eckler in there? Like, who would be your preferred couple captains tonight?
Well, I think what's interesting is the discount we're getting on the quarterbacks in this spot. So, we've got Tyreek Hill and Austin Eckler as the top two, and Eckler's been, priced higher than Herbert, especially with all those injuries. He was just getting too much volume, and so when a guy's getting 50 yards rushing, 50 yards receiving, 7 catches, and typically scoring a touchdown every game, like, we get it, right? So it's not like we don't understand. And with the volume Tyreek Hill has been getting, it's kind of the same thing here. I'm hoping that the game script sticks to how we think it should go, meaning that Miami keeps passing and the Chargers keep passing, and in the end we end up where one team's maybe down 7 in the fourth quarter or something like that, or 3, they kick a field goal. Heck, I'd even take some overtime, because this does feel like a game where it should be a back-and-forth affair. All in all, because of this discount, I do understand that the running backs can't take away from these quarterbacks, but I feel like these are quarterback games here. And look, if Tyreek Hill catches 10 passes for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's going to burn us. But I'm still willing to go with Tua on the discount, especially with Mike Williams being 7K. And I'm not trying to hop around. I'm just talking about how the thought process is working, where a guy like Mike Williams probably would have typically been, what do you say, just 8K, 10K?
Yeah, oh yeah.
8 to 9K.
Definitely a couple thousand higher probably.
Yeah, and so you're getting him at 7K with unknowns, which I think we take advantage of that tonight. Like, to me, this is a spot to take advantage of it, buy while he's low. Same thing for Jalen Waddle, where he's kind of been low. So I'm thinking I'm taking quarterback and filtering receivers around those quarterbacks tonight.
Yeah, I think there's a number of different ways you can build it. I think I'm at one of the quarterbacks, or possibly Eckler, with his PPR ability. And it's definitely more pronounced when we get over to FanDuel, where you only have the half-point PPR. Did you say you slightly prefer Tua between the two?
Slightly. A little bit cheaper, and I just feel like Tua, I know what I'm going to get from him. These offenses are concentrated, and, Tua's going to sling it. Like, we've seen him put up pretty much 300 yards every week here. And so I'm very enthused about them being on the road and needing to get this offense going, especially after last week losing to San Francisco.
Yeah, don't mind throwing either guy in there. I have a slight lean to Herbert, but Tua is a little bit more salary friendly there, saving you about $600. And again, it's largely splitting hairs, and we are, ownership is kind of spread out for captains tonight. So if you had to take a pass catcher instead of a quarterback, who would be your preference?
I think for me, it's Mike Williams or Jalen Waddle. Going with the discounted guys. And that's not anything against Tyreek. I think Tyreek's the best receiver play on this team. But, and this isn't I don't want to call it narrative street, Justin, but Jalen Waddle had an awful game last week. I got to think they're intentional about trying to get him some passes early. Just simple stuff, not anything down the field, but just a couple passes around the scrimmage, around the line of scrimmage, to just get him in the flow of the game. And I think if that happens, then we see Waddle take off early. So I really like Waddle tonight. He's definitely got the speed. And if they try to cover up Tyreek, it's only going to help him.
Yeah, a really nice opportunity for him to potentially bounce back from that poor game, and not going to have the same ownership, as Hill for sure. So we were messing around with this, and if you're a premium subscriber, you could have watched the lineup build video that we did earlier, but we were trying to mess with a lineup where you got maybe 3 of the studs. So if you did, say, Tua, Herbert, and Eckler, or Tua, Herbert, and Tyreek Hill. And this type of lineup, you'd probably want Hill in there if you've got Tua in the captain. Now, this is doable. It's not doable on FanDuel at all. You cannot get the 2 quarterbacks plus Hill or Eckler on FanDuel. You can't do it. FanDuel doesn't have the punt min salary guys, and the salaries on the high-end guys are a little bit elevated. So you can do this build on DraftKings, where you've got basically 3 of the top plays on the slate. Again, whether it's Hill or Eckler, pick one as your third guy in addition to the quarterbacks. Do you think this makes sense on DraftKings to go with both quarterbacks, like plus a stud pass catcher in the same lineup?
Well, so here's the crazy part. Like the really only stud pass catcher is Tyreek. Like Waddle's
right.
reasonable and Allen's reasonable. I don't want to fade Tyreek, but I honestly think you come out better fading him if you're going to take both quarterbacks. Because what we're suggesting is they soak up a lot of the points by popping touchdowns to a few guys. And so if you take Tyreek out of there, like I think if you go Waddle, Mike Williams, and then you can sprinkle in some of these other pass catchers, that I feel like if I'm playing both quarterbacks, I want to fade Tyreek, which feels yucky. I know, like, because I have Tyreek over 6.5 receptions in props tonight. So don't get me wrong. Like, I think Tyreek's going to be fine. But what if Tyreek ends up with an 8-catch, 85-yard game and a touchdown? That's not going to hurt me if Waddle has something similar and Allen has something similar and Mike Williams has something. And by similar, I'm saying, if he has 8 for 80 and a touchdown, that's 22 points. I'm saying right on the nose, 8 for 80 and a touchdown. And if Waddle's around 17 and Keenan Allen's around 16 and Mike Williams is around 16, then Tyreek Hill could be out on the outside looking in of an optimal lineup if Tua goes for 25 and Herbert goes for 25, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of my thought process behind it.
Yeah, your thought process is that the pass catching production is going to be spread around a little bit, which makes sense given the amount of options that these teams have. The counter argument, if you are rostering one of the higher end pass catchers, is that maybe you're banking on the production being concentrated and pegging the right pass catcher. Let
me just say too, Justin. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please,
you're right.
It's a lot more concentrated, I think, in Miami than in LA with the Chargers, where now they've even got Josh Palmer that's been involved, who I don't see why they just suddenly write him out of the offense.
Yeah, he's
because
played
Mike
well.
Williams is back. He's been playing fine. And Gerald Everett. Like, Miami has a couple stragglers like Sherfield and Gesicki, but the targets go to Hill and Waddle. Like that's where the production goes in the passing game.
Yeah, for sure. And with this type of build, you can either do both quarterbacks plus Hill or Eckler, or maybe both quarterbacks and then you skip Hill and Eckler, and then you get some combination of Mike Williams, Jalen Waddle, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's not that expensive either. And that leaves you with $3,200 per player. Now, the key is whether or not you feel comfortable with somebody like Cedric Wilson, who's $200. We've seen the $200, $400 guys on DraftKings kind of pay off the last few Sundays. Obviously, that would leave you with $6,200, plenty of room to fill out that last spot with a mid-range play that you like. If you don't feel comfortable with Cedric Wilson, maybe you're looking to somebody like Gerald Everett, and then you got 14, so you still got to find a relative punt. The key in these lineups, if you want to play both quarterbacks, is you're going to have to find yourself a relatively low-cost play. And we can go back. I don't want to skip over the Miami running backs. We can go back and talk about them in a second. But as far as a cheap play that you feel comfortable with, is it Cedric Wilson at $200? Is it like Trey McKitty at $400? Or do you not feel comfortable with any of those guys?
I probably don't really feel comfortable with any of those guys. But look, man, if it allows you to get everybody else, then at that point, you take a Wilson or a McKitty, and you say, hey, YOLO, right? Because one of those guys gets a 20-yard touchdown, you're sitting pretty at the end of the night when you've got all the other production. So I don't hate that at all.
The other way to make it work where you don't have to go to those punts would be to captain somebody that's a little bit cheaper. So, for example, if you like Mike Williams, and again, we've already got Herbert in this lineup, so
yeah,
and then move Tua to the flex. That leaves me with $46.50 per player. And in that realm, both kickers fit. Both starting tight ends fit. Sherfield maybe fits. Maybe you can sneak Joshua Palmer in there, but then you don't have to go to that $200 range. The Miami running backs maybe are gettable in that scenario. So if you want to play both quarterbacks and you want to captain one of them, you are probably going to have to punt with one spot. If you don't, the captain a quarterback, you can probably get by without it. So let's talk these Miami running backs. I just want to make sure we don't miss them. Mostert, Jeff Wilson, I mean, this team has been more than happy to just abandon the run at times. Do we just skip them entirely? How are you feeling about those two guys tonight?
Yeah, I don't like the running game at all. Just because, quite frankly, who are they going to use the most? Like, one of them could run it for a touchdown. Could be Jeff Wilson, because since he's gotten there, it seems like they've been interested in him getting some work, but I'm not sure, And so because of the uncertainty, I feel like I just kind of split the difference and play them both. You're looking at Mostert's been on the season on the field 56% of the time, Wilson 52%. He was out last week, and then in week 13, Raheem was out there 60%, Will 35%. It's just, man, it's so much up in the air. Both of them, Raheem ran 16 routes and Wilson ran 13. And so I don't know, Justin. Maybe you play Mostert and just take a shot at it. But I think what you're hoping here is one of these guys scores a touchdown and they go for, 60, 70 yards rushing. Like, that's what I think you're looking for, because they're not going to catch a whole lot of passes.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, if you look at the numbers the last few weeks, like Wilson didn't do any really last game. You brought up Mostert's numbers on the screen there. You can see what he's done. This has been a team that, again, has been more than willing to just abandon the run. Now, last week, they fell behind against San Francisco, and they ran the ball 8 times in the whole game. But the other point that you made is that they don't target these guys out of the backfield. They threw the ball 34 times, and their running backs had 2 targets. So, whereas Eckler on the other side is, he's getting 2 targets in a series sometimes. So, I don't love the Miami running backs either. I think if I had to choose one, I'd probably go for Mostert. For what it's worth, in our tools, we do have him projected with a pretty high leverage score. In our premium tools, that if you think that everybody's going to target the passing game, maybe Miami plays with the lead. I certainly don't mind Mostert in GPPs, but I don't think you need to go jamming him in there in single entry or 3 max or anything like that, or certainly not in cash game builds if you're doing that. So, all right, we'll pivot over and talk about FanDuel in a minute. Other players, and I mentioned this in the lineup build video too. Nobody wants to play the defenses here. I get it. It's going to be a high-scoring game. But if you're doing it because, a team might allow 28 points, that's thinking of it the wrong way, because the points allowed are such a small portion of the fantasy scoring for a defense. And this is a game that could be back and forth, could be up and down, could feature a lot of pass attempts. One miscommunication, one busted route, and you can get a pick 6 going the other way where, even if the Chargers score 28 points, well, a pick 6, you're getting 8-10 points from a defense in one play. That's certainly going to be volatile, and without that defensive score, it probably doesn't pay off. But I don't mind using the defenses at these prices. They're both under 4K. They're both under 20% ownership. The kickers are going to project better, obviously, in a higher scoring game. But you can see we've got them projected for 8. We got the Dolphins defense projected for 6. Like, one play could flip that. So I don't mind going with the defenses in some GPP builds. The kickers are probably a bit safer. We haven't really talked about the tight ends much as yet, but your thoughts kind of on those remaining positions for what you might be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we get the kickers in, but I kind of like kickers in higher scoring games anyway, because as crazy as it sounds, in higher scoring games, I feel like the points are more valuable. Like in a lower scoring game, that's kind of a defensive drag out. I and maybe I'm wrong. I feel like coaches are more willing to take chances to not kick field goals and go for it on fourth down because it's like, oh, our defense is playing fine. You know, we'll still be fine in good field position. But in a game where points are kind of coming at a frenzy and it's 14-10, in the first quarter, second quarter, you said, well, yeah, let's take these points, get a stop, and now we got a chance to keep pushing it. And then, of course, my favorite thing is when teams want to move the ball at the end of a half within the 2-minute drill. A lot of times that's a field goal opportunity. That's not usually a touchdown opportunity unless they get a big play right away. So that's kind of where I like to lean into these kickers. Cameron Dicker, believe it or not, maybe all Coach Staley needed was Cameron Dicker to show up in the facility because he's starting to kick.
And now he's kicking. Now. He'll kick again. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Cameron, for teaching Coach Staley the way. But yeah, I'm definitely in on the kickers here. Tight ends are okay. Like I said, Gesicki just hasn't been involved a lot. In terms of targets, he's at 9% on the season. This is a guy I thought might have been around 15 to 18% this year, 17 even, 15 to 17. He's nowhere near that. And it's just not there. Even in terms of his snap count, it's down. Him and Drew Smythe are pretty much splitting, which shows you how much this pass game depends on the wide receiving core.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind him in tournaments. If he gets snags one in the end zone or something, maybe he pays off the salary tonight. But don't mind using him in some GPP builds. But he's definitely not, quote unquote, safe at this stage by any means. So, all right, let's go ahead and make sure we get over to FanDuel so we can talk about that here quick before we hit lineup lock. And we got 8:20 tonight, so we do have an extra 5 minutes compared to what we have for some of these primetime games. So, yeah. And also while I'm getting that pivoted over, don't forget about our good sponsor, Stat Hero. If you've never heard of Stat Hero, it's a unique fantasy sports platform which allows users to compete only against the house and not against the other players in a contest. You can participate in head-to-head style contests where Stat Hero provides a lineup that you have to beat with your own, as well as pick'em style contests. You can check out the Big Dime League, a season-long NFL leaderboard contest with up to $50,000 in prizes, which you can enter all season long. And use promo code Grinders, give you a 50% deposit bonus, up to $250 to get into the action today. Looks like they've got Waddle versus Keenan Allen up there. What you got for a take on that one tonight?
Yeah, so we've got Waddle versus Allen. They've got Waddle line set at 74 or 7.42 receiving yards, and they're based it off the fantasy score version, not the actual yards. But it's the same thing. And then Keenan Allen's at 6.67, but they're giving Keenan Allen basically 1 extra point or 10 extra yards. And I'm still siding with Waddle here. With Allen, with Mike Williams coming back, they've got the emergence of Josh Palmer, and then they've still got Gerald Everett. They've still got Austin Eckler. I don't think Allen is going to have a bad night for what it's worth, but I just don't think he's going to outscore Jalen Waddle straight up with yards, even plus the extra 10. I think Jalen Waddle's going to be pushing a 400 tonight for what it's worth, which is why I'm so adamant about Waddle versus Allen, giving him 10 extra yards, basically. For what it's worth, I know sometimes people ask about props. I do like Allen over 5.5 receptions. Like, that's when I'm in big time on tonight. But other than that, I do like Waddle straight up in terms of yards tonight for sure.
All right, let's talk about the FanDuel build here. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you wanted to go Tua, Herbert, Tyreek on FanDuel, you're left with $6,000 for 2 spots. And there is nobody that you can fill Trey McKitty is 5K. I mean, you have to go with McKitty and then also another punt like Cedric Wilson, who's $200 on DraftKings. I don't know if that's optimal. I just 2 complete punts projected for like 3 fantasy points. I just don't think you can get there on FanDuel with both quarterbacks plus, another one of the high-end studs. And it just hamstrings your lineup too much. Eckler instead of Hill, you're left with $6,250 per spot. If you feel great about Trey McKitty and Cedric Wilson, who are basically the only 2 rosterable guys down there, have at it. Or Joshua Kelly, maybe Joshua Kelly gets a few touches. We got him with some ownership, but I don't know. It's just tough to think that that's going to be the way that you need to build tonight. So, and again, FanDuel, you only got half-point PPR, so you can see that Herbert and Tua take on a little bit more ownership in the MVP spot. I guess I'll open the floor for you to talk about maybe some of the differences that you have in how you're approaching FanDuel with the tighter cap.
Well, I mean, in FanDuel, I think for me, you just got to decide who's more important to you tonight, which, in my opinion, in this type of game, half-point PPR, I would say it's got to be the quarterback. Even though I know we're kind of talking quarterback on DraftKings as well, like it's quarterback for sure. You've got Herbert at 16.5, 2 at 16K, and then we're kind of getting down in the weeds here. Once again, we're going to have to fade one of the big boys. And I think what we do, Justin, is we kind of just take one side of this game, right? And so how do you think the game plays out? So, like, let's say you have Tua MVP, then what I'm probably going to do, I'm going to just not take Herbert, and I'm probably going to take Hill and Waddle. And that's going to feel really yucky as well. But then when I go down here, I can still squeeze in one of the bad guys, right? So, like, let's say you take McKitty, right? I don't mind playing one McKitty. I can't play 2 McKittys, if that makes sense on a slate like this.
Yep.
So I can play 1. I'm not playing 2. I can take that chance that he goes in, and now that gives me 11K, and then that gives me Mike Williams or Palmer or Mostert or Cameron Dicker, something like that. Or I could fade Tyreek, right, which I've talked about on this. And it's not like I don't feel like Tyreek is going to get there. I could fade Tyreek and take Mike Williams. I could get rid of McKitty, and now look at how that's opened it up for me. Like, I've got a much better lineup. I could even plug in Williams and Keenan Allen, and I'm still feeling good. I can get Everett. I can get Sherfield. I can get Gesicki. I can get any of those fringe guys and do something different there. Or I could fade Keenan Allen altogether. I could just go down to Josh Palmer. And then now that gives me, 10K. I could take Sanders. I could take Dicker. I could take both. So my point is, you can't play both quarterbacks, I don't think. I think you take one side of the game. And for me, as crazy as it sounds, if you think Tua's going to really get rolling, and I like Waddle tonight, Tua Waddle, and then I've got 2 receivers from the other side in this game, they're going to have to play catch-up if I feel like Miami's going to be in control. And that's my thought process on FanDuel tonight.
Yeah, it's just tough to get the 3-star lineup that is maybe a little more doable on DraftKings, where you have the $200 salary floor as opposed to a $5K salary floor on FanDuel. And, we do have some ownership on Joshua Kelly. But again, we've talked about McKitty, we've talked about Cedric Wilson, and Joshua Kelly, I mean, he's going to get like 6 or 7 touches. He is cheap on FanDuel. If you want to go there, fine. But if this is a real high-scoring game, like, it's tough for those fringe guys to get there and be optimal. If there's a 13-10 type of game, a lot of times 1 or 2 big plays can make a difference. But in a game with a 54-point total, it just doesn't feel like it's going to be that type of game tonight. Yeah. We do have some people asking about some other punts besides McKitty. We've had somebody ask about Durham Smythe in the chat, and then we've had somebody ask about Freddie Swain in the chat. Like, Freddie Swain is the 5th receiver for Miami. He's behind Hill, Waddle, Sherfield, and Cedric Wilson, so I don't think I get to Freddie Swain. I think you're getting, and if it's because he's 5K on FanDuel, but Durham Smythe, the backup tight end, maybe he falls into the end zone, and that can be viable. But your thoughts on maybe anybody that we haven't really covered?
Yeah, I mean Durham Smythe, maybe he does something. I doubt it. Um, I really don't think there's anybody else that's kind of going to come into play. Like even DeAndre Carter, like I feel like his role is kind of going to disappear a little bit with Mike Williams coming back. Not that he won't be on the field at all, because I think he's a part of their offense, but not a huge part. So I think we've kind of covered all the main pieces. I don't think we've seen anybody. Let's just hope Xander Horvath doesn't vulture a touchdown tonight, and I think we'll be all right.
You never know; it might happen for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'll take my chances on a slate like this one. That it's not you don't want exposure to all the punt guys because there's just going to be so much volume going around. All right, we've got about 2 minutes left until lock. Make sure you get everything finalized and in for your lineups so that you don't miss out. Anything crazy in the prop world that you really like tonight?
Yeah, if you can find it. So on some of the sites, they've got two around 285.5. I think that's on Prize Picks actually. A lot lower than the other sites. I took him there. Same thing for Herbert. Herbert's in the 280s on Prize Picks. I got him in there. Prize Picks is a lot lower than most tonight, but what is standard across the board everywhere is Keenan Allen at 5.5 receptions. I took him over. Tyreek Hill is at 6.5 on Prize Picks, 7.5 other places. So I just took the over there. I did take one Herbert passing attempts prop at 40.5, and that's a big number. But, man, I mean, we've seen him go for 47, 48 several games this season, in the 50s even. And in a game where I feel like they're going to have to throw the ball a lot, I took that. I took under 12.5 rushing attempts for, for Austin Eckler. As a result of the passing attempts prop, kind of doing a little bit of correlation there. And if you check the rushing attempts prop, Austin Eckler has gone over, but he hasn't gone over like crazy. Like it's not like you think. At 12.5 seems like it could be low for a running back, but this team likes to throw the ball. So at 12.5 attempts, he's gone over that number twice in the last 5 games. One was against Atlanta and one was against Kansas City, of all teams. Against San Francisco and Arizona and Vegas, where it was kind of a shootout, 6, 5, and 10. So I'm hoping that, once again, if the game script stays how we expect, these types of props should come to fruition, and I don't have to try to beat anyone. I just got to beat the house.
Very good and perfectly timed. We are right at the start of the game, and with that means it's probably time for us to duck out of here. So should be a fun game tonight. Hopefully, compared to some of the recent Sunday night games we've had, this one should feature some fireworks. So we hope you enjoy the game. We hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. Thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes for us. Greatly appreciate his help, as always, on the weekends. Thanks to Will for joining me, and good luck with your props tonight. And I am Justin, and we'll be back tomorrow for the start of a new work week on Monday. So until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will catch you back here tomorrow. See you, everybody.